Hey guys, it's me, the Prez, Lawrence Presman. It's Tuesday. Welcome to the NFL preview show, AFC North today. Ravens, Steelers, Browns, and Bengals. And of course, Matt Joseph at Mid-Major Matt and Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV joining us. And a hearty, happy hello to both of you. Ralph, start with you first. How have you been, my friend?
Those guys that didn't watch the college job sitting in hosting for Drew, Matt, and Rob Vino and I broke down the Big Ten West. Make sure you view it. A lot of interesting notes. I have a very strong best bet in there. So,
Matt, great job hosting the college football show today. You guys can find that at our YouTube channel, Wager Talk TV. You, Ralph Michaels, and Rob Vino, Big Ten Conference, right?
Yeah, I like talking about those mid-major conferences, and West fits that bill right there.
Outstanding hosting job. And also, guys, make sure to check out our golf show. Jared Smith hosted it with Andy Lang, Andrew McGinnis, and Nick Borman, and it was a really fun show. They got incredible chemistry. Really great to watch. Boys, we're talking about the AFC North. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Cincinnati. This should be a fun show. Obviously, we have one of the teams, Baltimore, not right up there in the odds to win the Super Bowl, to win it all. Pittsburgh. Does Big Ben win comeback of the year? Are they as good as they were when he was around 2 years ago? Cleveland. So much talent on both sides of that ball. Are they going to get it together? And, of course, Cincinnati. A half-decent defense. Some offensive weapons. And, well, we'll see what Burrow has to do. But, Ralph, overall, great division.
is. I mean, Baltimore obviously one of the best teams in the AFC East. I guess it's KC, Baltimore, whichever way you want to go. When we break down the schedules, just to give you a little Baltimore in this division, because of their crossover games with who they play, Baltimore plays the number 29 year. Pittsburgh plays the number 27 schedule, 31 schedule. Yeah. So a lot of value to be found with these teams.
Matt, what do you think of the division? Any chance two teams come out of it?
I think there's a chance that two teams come out of here. I mean, spoiler alert, and I've said it on various shows before, I think the Ravens win the Super Bowl this year, but I'm also worried the most about them with regards to if Lamar goes from a Super Bowl contender to barely maybe making it to 8-8. I mean, I enjoyed last year watching the demise of the Browns. I was on the Browns. Everyone bought the hype. Everybody's hyping them once again. We'll see if they can live up to it. And, of course, the Bengals are the fly in the ointment here who have talent to score a lot of points, but can they stop people when they have to? It should be very interesting to see top to bottom this division.
That is for sure. Well, let's start with your Baltimore Ravens, Matt. You think they got a chance to win the Super Bowl? We'll get to those odds a little later. I'm looking at Bet365 right now. The odds of them winning the North is a minus 225. The over and under is 11.5. Man, one thing we know is this team can rush the ball. They rushed for 1,000 more yards than the next best team. And they added Dobbins. I don't think they're going to be changing their offense too much. I think we're going to see a lot of running. But I got to tell you guys, I'm not as high on the Ravens as you are, Matt. I actually lean on under 11.5 wins. They've got some tough opponents. I'm just going to single out sort of the games they could lose, if you will. Week 2 at Houston. Week 3, they're hosting Kansas City. Week 6 at Philadelphia. Week 10 on the road playing the Pats. Obviously, they're a different team. Week 11, Tennessee. Week 12 in Pittsburgh. And Week 13 in Dallas. Look, I think it's going to be an 11 or 12-win season. I think it's going to come down to week 6 in Philadelphia. I do lean on the under, but I can get to 11 wins, so no bet for me. Matt?
Well, with regards to the total, yeah, I 11, 12 wins. I mean, there's just to really like, as you said, the run game is something that could sustain them. And if for some reason Lamar Jackson does get hurt, you're going to take a step down at quarterback, but at least you have Ingram and Dobbins in that rotation at running back so that offense could survive. I don't love their wide receivers outside of Hollywood Brown. I think their Oka works with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. And the big thing is, how much longer is he going to continue to get out of bounds? Because I could see somebody getting frustrated, getting juked by Jackson and maybe taking an extra shot. You see that occasionally with running quarterbacks. So while I do love this team and love their Super Bowl chances, I mean, I'm worried almost every time that Lamar Jackson runs the ball. You look at defense, they get Patrick Queen. I mean, to have him in the first round fall to them, he adds some youth there. I love their cornerback group. When you look at Humphrey, you look at Peter Smith, and then Tavon Young if he could stay healthy. So I love what they have at corner. A couple of games I'm kind of looking at with regards to potential flat spots, either that September 20th game at Houston before Kansas City at home, or that Washington game after Kansas City between the division game against Cincinnati, and hard to believe, maybe the Dallas game on December 3rd between road games against Pittsburgh and Cleveland. That could be the quote-unquote flat spot for them. But there's so much talent. There's such a good coach there in Baltimore. I trust him to navigate this offseason. And just there's so much to like right now. And so that's why Baltimore's my Super Bowl favorite right now. But I'm very worried every time Lamar Jackson leaves the pocket.
Yeah, no, it's a great point.
Matt,
Ralph?
Prez, I wanted to put Matt on the spot because, we went back and forth. We're going to talk about Kansas City next week. But I want to ask you this because you obviously know your teams very well. Which team can do better? Baltimore without Lamar or KC without Mahomes?
See, I mean, I think Kansas City's run game's not good enough. I think Baltimore's run game's good enough that I take Baltimore. If you take Mahomes out of Kansas City, I don't like their run game. I don't like their backup quarterback. And by the way, RG3 can run somewhat of the same system as Lamar Jackson. I don't even know who the backup is in Kansas City. Is it still Chad Henne, whoever it is? I think Baltimore can run their system better without Lamar Jackson. Not saying they're Super Bowl contenders, but I think Baltimore's the answer there.
Ralph, I think that's an easy question for the same reason. And, especially with Baltimore, really a running team and just a loaded backfield. I don't even think it's close. I think you see Kansas City falling apart. Even from a defensive perspective, they're not the same as Baltimore. But listen, let's hope that doesn't factor into anything because, frankly, I'd like to see those two superstars play. I just want to welcome in a bunch of the guests. Stove, I think that's your name. Gun Rights Mafia, AJS, Abel. Nice to see you guys joining us in the chat room. Shade, if you got any questions, let us know. We're taking apart the AFC North today. Ralph, I'm on the under, but it's a lean, no bet for me. I'm thinking an 11-5 season. I'm not as high on Baltimore as Matt is. I think we're going to see a regression from Lamar Jackson. I think we'll see it in two directions, Ralph. I think we'll see a regression, just a straight regression. And then I think we're going to see a lot of defensive coordinators sort of figuring that team out. We have seen it in the past with, Culpepper, Vic, McNabb, all of these running quarterbacks. At some point, the defensive coordinators do figure something out. I think it will open up. I mean, they're going to have to use a spy. It'll open up their passing game. They just picked up Dervani from Texas, a real fast wide receiver, so he should stretch the field a little bit. Under for me, but it's not a bet. Where are you at with the Baltimore Ravens?
Well, I agree that I lean the under with the regression, but I want to start by a laughable point. How many times this offseason did we hear Tennessee found the system to beat Baltimore and others are going to copy it?
Yeah, it's called Derrick Henry.
We've all heard that, right? But listen to this. If people go back and look, do you realize Baltimore had a 530 to 300-yard edge a 29-15 first edge. Why did they lose the game? They were -3 turnovers. You're going to lose any playoff game being -3 turnovers. Yeah. So KC didn't do Tennessee didn't do shit to stop Baltimore. Baltimore stopped Baltimore. So, that I think is a joke. But what I will say is this. Baltimore did feast on a lot of teams. Remember early in the year, 650 yards against Miami, 440 against Arizona, 452 against the KC defense, which was very porous back then, 500 yards against Cincinnati. So they are inflated. Baltimore only played from behind 18.6%. That, I think, came from Athlon, so it was a great stat. So you have a young quarterback like Lamar Jackson. The ball as the game is tied or you're leading the game, that is a huge edge. I think there's going to be regression just because the Browns are much better than last year. The Steelers with Big Ben are going to be much better than the Steelers last year. And Cincinnati, yes, you can say you have a rookie quarterback, but hey, you got an all-pro running back in Mixon, and let's add A.J. Green in. Cincinnati's going to be much improved.
Tyler Boyd, a defense that sat in the middle of the pack while they were on the field 90% of the game.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to bring up with Baltimore, Prez. Baltimore controlled the ball for 34 minutes and 34 seconds per game, compared to Pittsburgh, who controlled the ball for 28 minutes. That means Baltimore's defense was on the field 23% less than the Pittsburgh and the Browns because they can control the ball. So I completely think there is a regression. They were +4 close games, fall back because of that. They were +10 turnovers, and I don't look for them to fall back that much because they are a running team and Lamar Jackson isn't forced to throw. But again, you're not going to have those leads early. You're playing a much tougher division. Well, I think they're clearly the best team in the division. I'm close to betting the under, but I can't pull the trigger, and this is why. I said it at the beginning of the show. The number 29th easiest schedule. The last 8 weeks of the season, you play the number 30th schedule. You're a favorite in every game this season by 2 or more. You're a favorite of 6 or more in 9+ games. So while I think there's a regression, the schedule is so easy, it's not enough of a regression to get to the window with.
Yeah, we're on the same page. As far as the -225 goes for Baltimore, I can't bet that. Way too big a number for me. I think this division is going to be closer than most people think. I don't think Baltimore is necessarily going to run away with this thing. So -225, too much for me, Matt.
Yeah, I'm not taking the -225. I'll wait and see if it gets better, but I think the next team we talk about has more value.
Ralph, -225, you got the balls?
No, like I said, oh hell no. I'd be more apt to bet +600 to not make the playoffs. You would need a Lamar Jackson injury or at least a banged up Lamar Jackson, but I have to feel no one wants to see Lamar Jackson hurt. That's an NFL fan. But if you're gonna drop back 452 times and you're gonna run the ball 195 times, that's 600 times you have to have the ball. And you were completely healthy last year. I just can't see. It's going to be very difficult to keep that same kind of health.
Yeah, great point. He's Ralph Michaels at CalSportsLV. You can find him at wagertalk.com. We've got Matt Joseph with us at Midmajor Matt. You can find him at sportsmemo.com. Make sure to check out the college football preview show. Matt, Ralph, and Rob Vino took apart the Big Ten, and also our golf show with Jared Smith, Andy Lang, Andrew McGinnis, and Nick Borman. Check that out. If you guys have any questions, please let us know. So to sum it up, we all kind of lean, Ralph and I lean on under 11.5. Matt's undecided. None of us like -225 for Baltimore to win the division. Let's get into Pittsburgh, boys. +350 to win the division at Bet365. A win-loss record of 9.5. They went 8-8 last year without Big Ben. Just an incredible display of coaching talent from Tomlin, to say the least. Their most impressive statistic from my perspective was they kept teams on average under 200 passing yards a game. And in this era, that is just an incredibly impressive statistic. They've got some tough wins, though. I've singled out some games. Week 3, they're hosting Houston. Then week 4 at Tennessee. Week 5 at Philadelphia. That's quite a little 3-pack. Week 7 going into Baltimore. Week 9 going into Dallas. Week 12 hosting Baltimore. Week 14 playing Buffalo, I think that's going to be a massive game for playoff implications. And then week 17 at Cleveland. I can get to 9 wins. I can't get to 9.5. I lean on under, but again, there's not enough value for me to bet it. Ralph Michaels, I'll go to you first on this game, on this team.
Yeah, my computer comes up with 9.2 Prez, and that's with at the Browns. I have them as a 1-point dog playing at Cleveland when they host the Browns. I have them as a 3-point favorite. It's hard to remember. We all remember what have you done for me lately when Pittsburgh was an 8-8 team. But, just a year ago, Big Ben led the league in passing, 5,200 yards.
Yeah.
And this Pittsburgh team, was a dominant team. When you look at the stats, the reason they got to 8-8 is because they were +8 turnovers. They didn't make mistakes. They made those mistakes early. And I'm not one to really trade a first-round pick. But I'll tell you what, last year when they traded for Minka, he changed that defense. They lost those first 3 games, and they were a different defense with him in there. So, I think they made the right move. It was tough not having a first-round pick in this current draft because of acquiring them, but I think they're still a much better team for them. So you have an 8-8 team that was outgained by 27 yards per game. That's closer to a 7-9 or a 6-10 team. But, the defense, as you said, number 5 in yards per game, number 5 in points per game. They're going to be better on offense if the defense plays well. Again, I think Pittsburgh's improved. You play the 27th schedule, but I will point this out in the schedule. The first 8 games of their schedule is the 5th toughest in the NFL. Their last 8 games of the schedule, the easiest, number 32. So there's no bigger discrepancy between first half schedule and second half schedule than the Steelers. So if they start off 3-5, that's probably a positive because they can fly through the second half.
It actually makes for waiting to bet them to win the division very interesting. And you know what, guys? I also think if you look at this Pittsburgh team, Matt. They're just going to play smash and pound offensive football. I mean, obviously they've got Juju catching the ball. They got great wide receivers. But man, they added Eric Ebron. They've got Vance McDonald. They're going to have a 2 tight end set. James Conner was injured most of last year. Hopefully he's back and healthy. A whole different quarterback than last year. Man, this team can make some noise flat out because Ralph mentioned how great their defense was last year, both against the run and the pass. And you got to remember, they didn't have long drives, so their defense was on the field a lot last year. They're going to get even more rest this year. They'll have more. Yeah, Ralph, I saw the pen.
I just want to reiterate a point. Now, you could have finished your sentence, but we talked about Pittsburgh those first 3 games. They gave up 465 yards, 425 yards, and 436. They got Minka. The rest of the season, they allowed over 330 yards one time, and that was 348 yards to the Charger. So 450 yards the first 3 games, and then 270 yards the last 13 games.
Yeah, great point, Ralph. Matt, where are you going with this team? I lean on the under, and then we'll get into the plus 350 right after your thoughts.
I get to about 9 or 10 wins.
Yeah.
So, this is about where I am for Pittsburgh. I mean, I like, in a way, almost last year with all the quarterback injuries and everything, it almost felt like it was a redshirt year, and the younger guys got a lot more experience. I love their defense, although their corners, I would like to see some improvement in Pittsburgh's corners. They've got 4 of their first 6 at home, so just to keep in mind, and this is one thing I like to think about, if there is no fans early on, if we're playing football in front of nobody through September and October, they get hurt because they, have 4 of their first 6 at home. The Philadelphia game, the Cleveland game, which will be big in the division. They would get Baltimore on the road on October 25th, assuming maybe by November we're allowed to have fans. Just something to consider there. By the way, the flattest of flat spots here for Pittsburgh is that November 22nd game at Jacksonville, coming off the home game against Cincinnati, and then 4 days later on Thanksgiving hosting Baltimore. You have to wonder, by the way, before that, it's at Dallas, Cincinnati, at Jacksonville, Baltimore. I would wonder what Tomlin's boys will be thinking. November 22nd against the lowly Jacksonville. It will be essentially a home game too, because the Steelers fans will infiltrate that stadium. I just wonder what it will be like for them. Just to put something in your mind that maybe there's a bit of a flat spot there, or that Washington game after the Baltimore game. I think the Steelers are the other playoff team here. You could make a case potentially that minus 150 to make the playoffs. While I don't love advocating the minus prices on the playoffs, I think Pittsburgh's a playoff team. But once again, if Big Ben gets hurt, I don't trust Mason Rudolph, and I don't trust Duck Hodges.
Yeah, no, I don't like the minus 150 to make the playoffs at all. Guys, Justin Kramer put in, if the Steelers get on a good roll and the team starts to click, what's the realistic percentage they sweep the Ravens? And, let me just say this. I think Pittsburgh matches up very well against Baltimore. They've got a very fast linebacking core. They are going to have a better chance of stopping Lamar than a lot of other teams. And of course, I think they could play slow ball on offense where they're just going to, wind down that clock on 7-8 minute drives, especially if they're going to go into a 2 tight end set. What is the percentage chance? I have absolutely no idea, but I will tell you this. It's a hell of a lot better a chance than, Leicester or whatever they were winning the EPL 2 years ago. So, I think there is a chance. I wouldn't bet it, but I do believe that Pittsburgh will get one of the 2 against Baltimore. Boys, as far as the plus 350 goes, I think there's value here, Ralph. I look at this team. The defense comes back intact. I already mentioned they've got weapons everywhere on offense. They've got an incredible coach. Obviously, so do the Ravens. I'll flat out tell you, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be blown away if any one of Cleveland, Baltimore, or Pittsburgh wins this division, and I'll tell you my thoughts on Cleveland a little later. But Ralph, I like plus 350 for Pittsburgh better, a lot better than I like minus 225 for Baltimore.
I can agree with that. Again, I think there's some regression in Baltimore. I think, an 8-8 without Big Ben is an incredible season.
Yeah.
For our viewer, Prez, that wanted to know what the odds, I can say this. In the NFL, Pittsburgh at Baltimore, I have a line of 6. And that means Pittsburgh has a 29% chance to win. If they're hosting Baltimore and they have a 47% chance to win. So if you figure the odds out in the parlay, 29% and 47%, you can actually figure out the odds of what it is to sweep Baltimore.
There you go, Ralph Michaels. So you wouldn't do the plus 350 on Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I am high on the Browns. I am high on the Steelers. The Bengals are going to be improved. This is a division where I think everyone truly can beat each other up. And therefore, I don't think there's value on any minuses. A plus, I would take a flyer on a plus. If you said, make one value bet, the 350 to win the division or the minus 150, I would spend my $100 on the division bet. No question.
Yeah, I'm with you there. If I had to make a division bet, I would take Pittsburgh at plus 350. And you're right. One of our listeners, Justin, again, talked about old school hard knock football. There's no division in all of football with more hatred towards each other than those 4 teams, all a drive away from each other. Those games are going to be really intense. All 4 teams, as well, 3 of the 4 with outstanding defense, and Cincinnati not as bad as everybody thinks on the defensive side. Matt, I would take plus 350 for Pittsburgh as my favorite bet in the division odds, but again, it's not enough for me, so it is a pass. Where are you going?
I think that if anybody's winning this division not named Baltimore, I think it's Pittsburgh. We'll get to Cleveland in a second, but I like this Pittsburgh defense a lot. I like the fact that they can win close games. I like their kicker in a close game. I like their head coach a lot of times, and that's kind of the things that you need to win a tight division like this. Can I just ask Ralph one question for, he's talking about the schedules and how easy they are. How much does it factor in? Cleveland's going to be better than their record was last year. Cincinnati's going to be better than their record was. The Giants we talked about for the NFC East are going to be better. I'm a higher slightly than you guys are on Washington, at least defensively. How much does that factor in? Because, their schedules are a lot lower in terms of the numbers, but a lot of the teams who posted poor records last year are going to be better than those.
Yeah, my strength of schedules in the Wager Talk schedule guide that's still available at Wager Talk on my page are based on this year's power ratings, just taking the power rating and the home edge. So they're based on my numbers, though, Matt. You and I may have different power ratings on teams by even 1, 2, or 3, especially teams like Detroit and Tampa Bay, where I had a tough spot. But my strength of schedules are based on this year's numbers and this year's home field edges with fans in the seats.
He's Ralph Michaels, wagertalk.com, Matt Joseph, sportsmemo.com. Let's get into Cleveland. Scott Brown writes Baker Mayfield, another overrated QB. I don't know who the other ones are, Scott, but we'll be addressing that in this segment. Cleveland at Bet365 is plus 500 to win the division. The total win-loss is 8. I can see 9 wins here, guys. I leaned on the under for both Pittsburgh and Baltimore. I lean on the over in this one. I can see a 9-7 Cleveland team. Look, here's the bottom line for me. I think this is the most talented team in the division. You look at their offense. I mean, their running back game. If Kareem Hunt can go back to half of what he was in Kansas City, they've got one of the fastest, most dynamic runners in all of football. Nick Chubb, another great power runner. So they've got a real interesting dynamic in their backfield. Their wide receiver core, I don't know if there's a better pair out there than their wide receiver core. They've got a decent tight end game. And their defense is spectacular. Like, from Myles Garrett all the way down, I mean, their front seven is as good as any in all of football. It's really going to come down to that coach, Stefanski, and whether he can really rally the troops, put the right game plan together, keep Baker from making mistakes. If he does, man, I'll tell you, I think the sky's the limit for Cleveland. I'm not going to sit here like everybody did last year and say, oh, this is the team, they're going to the Super Bowl, they're winning the division. But, man, take Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield out of the equation, and you tell me, Ralph, who's the better team?
Prez, I can't argue with anything you said. I am so high on the Browns.
Me too.
The reason I haven't bet them is because I'm from Cleveland and I'm a freaking Cleveland fan. If you're a Cleveland sports fan, here's what I equate. Last year, all we heard about were the Chicago Bears and the Cleveland Browns. Vegas was inundated. I really think this year's Browns team is just like San Francisco's team 2 years ago. Do you remember when the 49ers and Garoppolo got all the love in the world? What happened? They had to learn how to play together for 1 year.
Well, he got injured.
What happened 2 years later? We saw what San Fran did this last year. I think that's exactly what Cleveland is this year. I believe you finally have a head coach. You've gone through, 15 head coaches, and Pittsburgh's gone through 1. You can't get any stability. If you want to know what the Browns offense is going to look like, you just watch the Minnesota Vikings tape from last year and change the uniforms. You're going to have 2 tight ends. You're going to have a fullback. That takes all the pressure off Baker Mayfield. Their new OC, Alex Van Pelt, is completely changing the offense where he's going to be under center more than he's ever been. They're going to be under center over every snap. That leaves play action. That leaves Beckham open. And you want to talk about Odell Beckham. If you watch the Browns at all, everyone talked, oh, my God, Odell Beckham was a whore and all this trouble he got in and what happened. Well, I'll tell you what, Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry both still had 1,000 yards last year. Add in Hooper at tight end, add in Nokwa, add in the 2 running backs, add in getting I think the two right offensive linemen, signing the free agent and drafting him in the first round. Again, you are going to be the Minnesota Vikings where you don't make mistakes. Baker Mayfield last year, 22-21 ratio. That's why the Browns finished where they did. He doesn't make those mistakes because he doesn't have to. Your defense isn't on the field, so they don't have to be. Let's remember Myles Garrett sat out the whole second half of the year after the Baltimore suspension. That completely changed the defense. And I'll tell you what, they have more money than anyone on the cap. If they give Clowney the $15 million he wants to sign for a year, and you add him to the mix of defensive ends, I think the Browns betting him to win the division is a fair bet that I realistically can think. But again, I say that as a partial fan, but I can't bet it because I am a damn Cleveland fan, and we know how many titles I have.
No, I understand, but I'll tell you one thing, Matt. They add Clowney, and this could be a historically good defense. Oh, my God. The pass rushing on this defense is going to be how is any team going to guard them? And again, like I said with Pittsburgh, they match up well against Baltimore too from a defense to offense perspective. But you take a look at this team straight down the middle, wide receivers, running backs, front seven, defensive backs, tight ends, wide receivers. This is the best team in the division on paper, period. It's just a matter of whether they can put it together and honestly, whether Baker Mayfield can calm the hell down.
I'll be the fly in the ointment here. I'm not buying the Browns. Using Ralph's schedule guy, which has 8.5. I don't know if there's still any 8.5s out there. I'm taking the under. There's just a lot of things I don't like. Using Ralph's guy, which is fantastic. They're favored by 3 points or less 6 times this season, and they are an underdog of 3 or more 5 times. And there are things, look, everything on paper looks great. As we talked about this last year, it was, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, they add Hooper, and the offensive line got a little bit better. The defense got a little bit better, but I don't trust a new head coach navigating this offseason. I don't trust a new head coach with all the egos in the locker room and Baker and Odell Beckham. I don't trust if there's some sort of losing that starts. I don't trust that this team could keep it together. Alex Van Pelt, while he is in theory a very nice offensive coordinator, has never been offensive coordinator except for briefly in 2009 with the Bills. There's a lot of people learning on the job together, and this is not the type of offseason, especially when you've got Tomlin, when you've got Harbaugh sitting there in front of you, 2 guys who will be able to go through this thing better than that. There's a lot of things I don't like about the Browns that I want them to show me something before I take anything with them. By the way, 4 of their final 6 on the road. I think that, December 20th and 27th game back-to-back in New York, I think they lose one or potentially both of those games. I think they limp down the stretch, a little bit here, and I'm not buying the Browns. I think the under for the Browns is my favorite, especially if you can get an 8.5. I'm not buying it until I actually see it on the field.
Listen, Matt, I understand what you're saying about Stefanski, but let's be honest here. LaFleur was in a division with Zimmer and Nagy and put up monster numbers. McVay was in a division when he came in as a rookie coach, won the entire division, went all the way to the Super Bowl. And on and on. There's no rhyme or reason to which one is going to be great and which one isn't, but Stefanski has the pedigree, and I think what Ralph mentioned about the style of offense with Minnesota is really perfect, because if you look at the actual 2 teams together, Minnesota had the 2 big wide receivers, they had the tight end down the middle, they had a really strong running back, and they had a quarterback who really was prone to make mistakes as well and was only really at his best on play action passes. I think the 2 teams from an offensive perspective mirror each other really well between Minnesota and Cleveland. And I think Stefanski just needs to keep doing exactly what he did last year. But I'm telling you guys, watch out for this defense. I would not be surprised if it ends up being the number 1 defense in all of football. Ralph, anything to add?
Yeah, one thing we're not going to hear about, but I think this is going to help Baker immensely, is bringing in Case Keenum. Case Keenum played for Minnesota. He knows Stefanski's style. He is a veteran in that. And having Case Keenum there, Case Keenum succeeded in Minnesota. You don't need a good quarterback in Minnesota's system with this defense. So I think he's the perfect veteran to bring in and help bring Baker Mayfield along in his 3rd year.
Ravens right off the bat for this team. First game out. It's going to be a fun division to watch. Ralph, do you have the balls to take Cleveland plus 500 to win the division?
Yeah, well, like I said, I didn't actually bet them, but I should bet them, and I still may. When I'm looking at the app again and have a beer, I'm going to say screw it because I need to. Because when you're handicapping and you're a true fan, you have to keep things impartial. So the impartial in me says to bet it. The fan in me says don't, because it's Browns and you're wasting money. So, Matt makes a good point. It is a first-year head coach, and the Browns have had so many first-year head coaches, and they have to prove it. And losing, being 0-1 isn't going to help them, because I think they get beat, because they're at Baltimore to start. The only thing they can't have is, you have Cincinnati the next week.
As
long as they start 1-1, I'm comfortable for them. Right? They should easily start 2-1. As long as then I think the bye, and I'd like to see if Matt agrees or not, because Baltimore you should lose. You have Cincy at home. You have Washington at home. There's no question you should win those. At 2-1, is that enough for Matt to buy in, or does he need more than that?
And then 3-2, Ralph, because then they've got the Cowboys and the Colts at home. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, the Browns beating two teams that they are supposed to win because you have them favored by a touchdown or more. No, I'm not ready to buy them. I want to see what they do in Dallas. It's easy for the Browns, and it's easy for teams to beat the teams they're supposed to. But if you're saying, and which you guys are, it seems like they're ready to take the next step, go to Dallas and play well.
I think you're going to see them play well in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean,
what's the line on that Baltimore game? I know it's already up. I'll tell you in a second.
I just, I want to see them, the Dallas, Indy, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, that 4-game stretch. You show me a 3-1 or a 2-2 in that stretch, and I'll buy them. But I'm not buying them because they beat two bad teams in the Bengals and the Reds.
So let's talk about the Baltimore game right off the top. Baltimore is -9 at plus 100. I like Cleveland. I'll take Cleveland and the points all day long in that game.
Yeah. My power ratings say 7. I will say this, Prez. This has nothing to do with this year, but it's one of those fun stats. In week 1, I think the Browns are 119-1 straight up the last 21 years.
Yeah. And so were the Cubs prior to them winning their World Series. And so was Boston before they won their World Series 15 years ago. Things do change, Ralph. I promise you Cleveland will not be the worst team ever forever.
Thank you.
Yeah, I promise. I swear. Okay, boys, Cincinnati. Plus 2,500, a total of 5.5. Man, as we spoke about right off the top, they got weapons, Ralph. A.J. Green, still one of the best wide receivers in football. Boyd is good. Mixon is good. I think Burrow is going to be an absolute monster, and I think he's going to be a monster quick, too. Their defense last year was really a middle-of-the-pack defense, which is a hell of a lot more impressive than that sounds, given that they were probably on the field 40%, 60% of all games. With that said, I can't get to 6 wins here. This is, again, a transition year for Cincinnati. I see them going 5-11. I lean on the under. I'm not betting it. Ralph?
I agree with those sentiments as well. I lean with the under. I think they're going to be fortunate to go 1-5 in the division. And so when you take those games out, how many winnable games do they have? Between the threes, the only other games they're going to have, home against the Chargers, I have them between the threes. Home against Jacksonville, 3.5. Against Washington, against the Giants, against Miami. So you've got a young team. Yes, A.J. Green's supposed to be back, but you know how many games A.J. Green has played in the last 24? 1 game. He's missed 23 of the last 24 games, so we have to make sure he's healthy. He's the perfect complement to Mixon. And, my thought on rookie quarterbacks have changed. Kingsbury proved to me out at Arizona with a rookie quarterback, you can win some games. Burrow's a kid who started at Ohio State the first 2 years, learning that system, then at LSU, becoming what he did. He's the coach's son. His dad was the DC at Ohio University for 20 years. So you got a coach's son. I love those kind of QBs. So I think Burrow's going to have some success. I think Cincinnati's defense is going to be improved, but I just think there's so much of a learning curve, and they're still so far behind the other teams. In fact, right now in my power ratings, I have them 10.5 points behind Baltimore, 6.5 behind Cleveland, 5.5 behind Cleveland, and 6.5 behind Pittsburgh. So in this strong division, yes, they're going to be improved, but it may not show that much, once we get past 4 or 5 wins.
Matt, before we get to you, Jeremy, nice to see you. John Reed, where's your only smoke show? What does he mean, Ralph?
I don't know.
Are we working on a Wager Talk smoke show where we just all sit around and smoke? What?
A cigar show?
John, I'm happy to answer that question. If you could just maybe change the wording around so I can understand it, that would be awesome. Matt, Cincinnati, both Ralph and I lean on the under. Certainly not going to take plus 2,500 for them to win the division, regardless of the fact that $1 can buy me dinner. Where are you going, Matt?
I agree on the under. I got to 4 wins with possibility for 5. The start of this schedule for them, I'm really high in the Chargers, as we'll get to when we do the AFC West. I think that you're talking about the Browns being on par with the 86 Bears, and then you get the Eagles defense, Baltimore defense. The Indy defense should be pretty good this year. So we talk about those first 6 games. I mean, Joe Burrow is going to see his fair share of very good league, and you have to wonder, if they don't get 1 or 2 wins from that Cleveland, Tennessee stretch and the late stretches. I don't see enough areas here for the Bengals to get wins. I mean, even in their home games, when you look at Dallas is coming, and you look at Pittsburgh and Baltimore. I agree with Ralph. I think maybe 1 win in the division for Cincinnati. Also, you got to watch. Joe Mixon said he was not going to potentially be at training camp if they don't extend his contract. You've got AJ Green, who is going to be there, but his contract is potentially extendable. So if they don't have Joe Mixon, I don't trust Gio Bernard. And I think this is just a team that's going to grow this year. It's going to be like the redshirt year. I think we'll see a good Joe Burrow some games. I think he'll win him maybe a game we don't think he will, but I think he'll also throw some picks and lose games that they potentially have a chance to win. I love William Jackson. He's one of the most underrated corners in the country when it comes to that defense, but I get to 4 or 5 wins, so I'm looking at the under for the Bengals. I think it's going to be kind of a redshirt season for that team, and maybe next year is their year for us to start really breaking them down.
The director is with us as well. Love your name, my friend. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us so regularly. I love seeing all these names. Matt, 2 weeks in a row, you have mentioned the 86 Bears. Could I ask you why you don't mention the 85 Bears? Because that's the actual team you're thinking about.
Well, was the Super Bowl technically in 86 that year? Was it technically in 1986 Super Bowl? So technically that could have been this. Yes, I meant the 85 Bears.
I was just curious, dude. Their record was 15-1. They had a 4-game stretch where I think their defense let 6 points in or something. There was amazing 30 for 30 on that team I just recently watched. Such a fun team, that's for sure. Guys, if you have any questions, let us know. Stove McPherson wanted to know who will throw more interceptions, Baker or Burrow. For me, Ralph, the answer is Burrow, and I think it's largely because of the style of play we're going to see coming out of Cleveland. I think this is going to be a somewhat conservative Cleveland offense in the mirror of what we spoke about, what was going on in Minnesota last year. And I think they're going to utilize their tight ends. And, man, if Kareem Hunt can get going, my God, that guy's a complete game changer. I think it's going to be Burrow that throws more interceptions. Ralph?
Yeah, I don't think there's a question with the Browns. With the Browns changing their offense, they are, and Burrow being a rookie. Again, being a rookie is tough in this league. I mean, these cornerbacks are so fast that he has to face, and these defensive ends are so fast to put pressure on you that you didn't see in LSU. That to me is an easiest question. Prez, I got a question. Who did those 85 Bears lose to?
Miami.
Yep, the one team that stopped them from joining the champagne for being undefeated.
Yeah,
right?
and Miami wasn't really a great team that year. They struggled that year, but they did. I mean, they had Clayton and Duper, good running back. But Marino did not have that team in full swing. But man, I'd rather watch the 2019 Kansas City Chiefs than the 1985 Chicago Bears any day of the week, Ralph.
Yeah, I was watching one of the Ohio State old football games, and football back then was just a lot different with that running the ball. I agree with you. A little more exciting now.
Guys, AFC Championships. KC is plus 300. Baltimore is plus 300. Very strange that the Pats are plus 1,000 where Tennessee is plus 1,400. I would have... That to me is mind-blowing, but we can do that on another show. Matt, I know you like Baltimore to win the Super Bowl. I know you don't like them at minus 225 to win the division. What about at plus 300 to win the conference?
Obviously, they're one of the favorites, so that's why they're priced that way. I would love to get more, and this is one of those cases where you shop around. I know you're probably talking about 3-1, plus 325, plus 350. The difference is negligible, but if you like a certain team, I'd say shop around. I think the Ravens are the best team in the AFC. I just do. So therefore, I would take it. I don't love the price, but I believe in them strongly. I believe that if somehow Lamar Jackson potentially is not 100%, RG3 can run a modified system. That defense is good. I just like them more than Kansas City. I like Harbaugh, so I don't love the price, but I would take it because that's just what I believe in.
Ralph, Cleveland at plus 1,600 to win the conference. Sexy enough for you?
I'm a believer that when you have a team, you have to go through a progress. And I'm going to guess off the top of my head, 7 out of 10 or 8 out of teams do this. You first got to get to the playoffs as a team, and then you can move to the next step. So, no, I'm not going to bet a team that can't even win their division, to prove to me to do that, to make that step to win the conference. I don't think it's worth the investment.
Guys, we're going to move away from the AFC North for 2 seconds because, Ralph, you made a great point. Excluding Dallas, who never progresses, teams do progress to get to the Super Bowl. And I get that Hopkins ain't at Houston anymore. I understand everybody hates on Bill O'Brien, even though all he does is win. This team is plus 2,500 to win the conference. I think we're going to see Deshaun Watson go off this year. That's my best value bet of this show. Houston plus 2,500. Any quick thoughts, Matt and Ralph?
They were the number 31 defense last year, allowing 6.1 yards per play. So that certainly has to get shored up.
Yeah, Matt, you hate on my bet?
I don't love it, but if Brandon Cooks stays healthy, we remember what Brandon Cooks did in that Rams offense. Randall Cobb is a great slot guy for that offense. Once again, also Will Fuller. If you
he's so good.
That I'm getting, but he's got to stay on the field. If you tell me, and J.J. Watt, if you could tell me that Cooks, Fuller, and Watt could play 40 games combined, because it's a 16-game season. If you could tell me they play over 40, I would give them a better shot. But their injury history tells me I'm not going to get over 40 games from those three combined.
Guys, bottom line here, AFC or NFC, who's going to win the Super Bowl? Ralph?
I think the NFC, in my mind, has 3 or 4 teams that can win it. In my mind, the AFC has 2, Baltimore, Kansas City. So that gives me more options to be healthy at the end of the year if I say the NFC.
Matt, Baltimore is plus 650 to win the Super Bowl. That seems like the best bet in regards to Baltimore that we've discussed.
Yeah, probably. I mean, look, I agree with Ralph that there's probably more options from the NFC, although I'm a little concerned about what's going on in New Orleans with what Drew Brees said. I know he walked it back. I know he apologized, but there's differences there. I think Baltimore wins, but Ralph's right. There's more options in the NFC side.
Yeah,
of
you
it.
guys watched The Replacements, obviously, Keanu Reeves. What do you think? They're going to pull the replacements on Breeze just on the first possession? The offensive line just steps apart and he just gets walloped and then it's over and they move on? No, they will not do that. Okay, boys, what's next week, Matt?
Well, the Monday show's doing the AFC South. Do you want to do a better AFC South show next week on Tuesday, or do you want to just go to the AFC West?
Let's keep.
No,
Yeah, we got to keep going in order. But listen, Teddy and Drew do an outstanding job on that show, on the Monday show. So guys can listen to both of them. I really enjoyed doing this with both of you guys. It was a privilege. Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV. Hook him up on Twitter. Ralph, tell us about your NHL guide. I mean, it's just amazing. And especially for a guy who doesn't really handicap the NHL, chock full of information.
Yeah, I asked a lot of guys what they would want in the guide. So yeah, it's a little bit early. It's up there now for people to look. But since we're taking bets in the NHL, we have the format. We have the first round seeds. I mean, I found interesting things. We did matchup pages. In the matchup pages, the New Yorkers are the number 7 seed. They're hosting Florida in the best of 5 play-in round. They have won 4 straight, and in the series, they've gone 1-5-1. I have 13 different sources from 1 to 31 where these teams rank. So if you want to know where NBC Sports has them, ESPN, Yahoo, then I got information from Carm, from Buster, from Marco, from Minty. They all gave me their 1 to 31s. If you want to know how many goals each team scored and what their record was. I talked to Andrew McGinnis, and Andrew McGinnis says, I love betting team totals. So is it important to know what the Islanders' record is when they score 2 goals, what their record is when they score 3 goals, what their record is when they allow 2 goals? I have every situation broken down for every team. Just a ton of stuff I found fascinating. Of course, it's free at wagertalk.com.
Justin Kramer, I like your pick. Hawks with an upset over the Oilers. Not bad. Matt, my question to you, and then we'll call it a show, is we're 52 minutes into the show, and one of our listeners gave us a thumbs down. Could you explain to me why a grown adult would log on to YouTube to watch a show and then actually have it in him to put a thumbs down? Like, what would possess a grown adult to thumbs down free content that he doesn't have to watch in the first place?
I guess it's my fault. I will.
Yeah, that's not your fault. It's me, dude.
Hey, by the way, Prez, we need to settle up here. Remember last week, Ralph said, and I know that he needs time to get his numbers, but remember, he said the Dolphins were going to win 1 division game this season, and he said we were going to visit this week, and so I need to see if he's still sticking to that 1 division win for Miami.
You know what? I'm going to plead ignorance. I'm going to say that I invested all of my time getting that NHL guide out today, that I wasn't able to do that, but I wrote it down, Matt, and I promise you at the start of next week's show, I will have my numbers and see if you want to bet them at that point.
I think Prez also wanted to jump in on that one too.
He did, and
we have $1,000 bet, Ralph. We have $1,000 bet from last week.
We do $500 on 6.5, $500 on 6.
Yeah, for Miami. Love you guys. Outstanding show. Everybody make sure to check the Korean baseball show out. Andrew McGinnis, Dave Koken. It starts in 5 minutes live at Wager Talk TV, our YouTube channel, and at Periscope, and on Twitch, and on Facebook, and so on and so forth. It's a privilege to be doing this with you guys, and for all of you listeners. Be well, take care, and I'll see you all on stoppage time. Oh, Mappy McMap says, who says it was an adult? Mappy McMap, I'm going with it was an adult. I would say minus 1,200 it was an adult. Anyway, for the rest of you guys, make up for that stupid thumbs down and give us a whole lot of thumbs up, because it really irks me that grown adults can log on and actually take free content that they don't have to watch and then insult it. It bothers me. Anyway, mwah. Love you all.